Can you hold the book up, whatever you had up, so I can see the title?
So yes, the reading assignments are posted on our website, the BuddhistPathofAwakening.org, and the Path of Awakening Buddhist Center.org, get it correctly. And also we send out emails every week. If you are not receiving our emails and would like to, with the reading assignments and other news, please put your name in chat and you'll be added to the list if you wish. I'm going to mute everyone for the class. You can always unmute yourselves, and you will unmute yourselves if you have questions during the Q&A and during the discussion period. So with that, I think, anything else, Barry, before we start? Okay, here we go. And we're starting with chapter 27. Barry's going to be covering labeling thoughts.
And I'd like to start with a bow if you care to join in. Okay, labeling thoughts. We're getting down to basics here. You may have noticed that in meditation, thoughts happen all the time. The natural state of our mind is busy thinking all the time. And this natural activity is just the way life is. It's just that in meditation, we become aware of that activity. Most of us really aren't as we go through our daily life, that thoughts are kind of like air. They're just part of what is. So in meditation, we're beginning to examine that in a particular way. The expression lost in thought is a really good one because that's where most of us spend most of our time. And more specifically, we all have these experiences of suddenly noticing something right there in front of you that's been there for a while now, and you just weren't seeing it, or walking by somebody you know and not seeing them. You're lost in thought. Another common thing is losing track of what you're doing, what you're saying, realizing that you just missed what someone was saying to you because your mind had taken you away somewhere. Excuse me, I got to turn that off. So this is what goes on with our minds. All of this type of mental activity that we are usually not even aware of. It's the thoughts that carry you away from the present into the past or the future. And that's where we spend most of our lives. And then we come to meditation. And guess what? There are thoughts now. And in fact, there may be times when it seems that most of your meditation has been spent lost in thought. There's nothing unusual about that. It happens to the best of us. I'm remembering a quote that was told to me from our teacher, Chogyam Trungpa, who said, many people think that meditation will be like a sedative. Well, it's not. It's a laxative. And what he meant by that is that as you begin working with your mind, things can get really chaotic. All kinds of thoughts can come up. So don't be discouraged, and please do not beat yourself up. It's just the experience of that particular meditation. And if it seems that all of your meditation is like that, well, that is just another thought. All this could actually be viewed as interesting. Now, this may sound easier said than done, but it's true. The key is to keep coming back to the basic instruction. When thoughts arise, return the attention to the breath. It is so simple, so direct, and so effective. So don't be discouraged. After all, being discouraged is another thought. He says in the reading, I forget exactly, but that maybe 85% of the time in meditation, you're lost in thought. And he says, be grateful that your practice isn't 100% thoughts. Fact is that even if your thoughts are nonstop, the fact that you are aware of that means that you haven't hit 100%. So in meditation, all mental activity is regarded as thinking. And it can come a lot of different ways. There can be little flickering thoughts, quiet murmurings going on. There can be really dramatic thoughts, vivid stories of past successes or defeats that just take you away. It can be powerful, compelling thoughts, very important, distressing. There can be comforting thoughts. Even being discouraged or elated. Everything that comes up, and that includes emotional experience, is regarded as thought. Now, emotions can be tricky. If you examine an emotional experience, you'll find that it is always a combination of a bodily sensation and thoughts. There's a physical experience of it, and then a story or a narrative that explains or supports the feeling. Respond to it in the same way that you do to a thought. Come back to the breath. You see, emotions are difficult to maintain if you cut through the storyline. And that story is just that. It's a story. It's a thought. But wait, you may see, I'm thinking about something real. This is not a dream. A thought or emotion may seem about something very real, an important event in the past or something expected in the future. But it is a thought. It is not the event. It is a thought about the event. He says in the reading, thoughts have a reference point to reality, but they are still just thoughts. I'm just going to quote something he said here about the nature of the kinds of thoughts that can come up. You may think that you are going to make love to somebody who is extraordinarily lovable. You might think that you're about to have such a fantastic affair that it could exhaust the whole universe. You might have a thought of assassinating your guru. You might even want to make lemon juice or eat cookies. In meditation, no thought is regarded as good or bad. All of it is regarded as thinking. He goes on to say, a large range of thinking goes on, but in terms of sitting practice, it does not matter whether you have monstrous thoughts or benevolent thoughts, sinful or virtuous thoughts. Any thought is just thinking. So please don't be shocked by your thoughts. And this is important. Don't think that any thought deserves a gold medal. They're just regarded as thoughts. Let me see here. Another thing that can go on as thoughts arise, you could act as a traffic cop. You know, this thought goes here, this one goes there. Now we better ignore this one. Like, I don't like that thought. Oh, that's a good one. These are all judgments and evaluations of a thought. And they're also thoughts. And they're also unnecessary. They're a distraction, they're a waste of time. They're keeping you in your dreams. There are other kinds of mental activity that may not seem like thought, like doubt or guilt, which can be very compelling and not seem to involve active thinking. But guess what? They actually are thoughts. If you doubt that, well, guess what? That is also a thought. There are thoughts that can be very sticky and compelling. You can actually observe that quality of the thought, but don't linger on it. Like any other thought, see it and return to the breath. This may sound easier said than done, but it's true. The key is to keep coming back to the basic instruction. When thoughts arise, return the attention to the breath and be patient. If this came really easily and naturally to us, well, then we wouldn't need this. Remember, it's called practice for a reason. And an important point here is that it's important to see your thoughts, to take note of them as they arise, but then leave it at that. See the thought and return to the breath. There's no need to analyze thoughts, categorize them, tease them out about what it relates to, what meaning it may have, what it may be saying about who you are, what your mental state is. That kind of contemplation may have its place, but meditation is not that place. It actually is another way of engaging with our thoughts. What is it in the reading? He says, he makes a reference to thoughts being like weather. That like weather, which changes and comes and goes, our thoughts come and go, changing all the time, just like the weather. Sometimes our thoughts are chaotic, sometimes quiet, just like the weather, sometimes stormy, sometimes calm. In the meantime, you are here. You take your seat, erect, relaxed, witnessing the thoughts as they go by. He says, we have to accept that all experiences are just thought patterns. As far as meditators are concerned, that is the key. That is the key. Regarding all thoughts, all emotions as a kind of display of the mind. Experiencing that fully may not be happening, but understanding that is the nature of experience develops with practice. Yeah, he says, but once you begin to realize that everything is thought process, you can handle your life because nothing is complicated. Everything is thought. Now, of course, there's all kinds of real life stuff going on. But the point is, this very simple practice of coming back to the breath, to awareness over and over again, it becomes more and more natural to do that in daily life. And greater clarity emerges out of the confusion of the habitual preoccupations with the stories that keep unspooling from our minds. We become more and more present. The thoughts are there, but we see them as thoughts. And we can see what is actually happening now. What does all this have to do with labeling, you may ask? Remember the title of the chapter, Labeling? Labeling is simply saying to yourself, thinking. When you become aware that a thought is happening, you label it, thinking. It is a very useful tool to cut through any confusion or struggle. There can be a lot of confusion. Sometimes it's not that clear what's going on. Is this really thoughts, or it can be sometimes difficult. I mean, you can get really involved in stuff. Labeling thoughts is very useful. It cuts through that. It gives you something tangible. Thinking, and return the attention to the breath. See, by actively labeling thoughts as thinking, you are releasing that thought, letting it go its way. As soon as a thought is labeled, as soon as you see that it is a thought, it is free to go. And it does, dissolving. They say thoughts are self-liberating in that way. They cannot sustain without your attention. So that instant that you see the thought, label it, you're back. You've already returned. If your mind is very active, really chaotic, I mean, if you have a room full of monkeys arguing over a banana up here in the noggin, you can even kind of sub-vocalize it, say to yourself, not quite out loud, but thinking. Really put a pin in it. Because the thing we're addressing here is that very important point between being in your thoughts and seeing them. So, by doing this, you step out of the dream and you're back. And it's also important that you do this without any judgment. You know, having very active thoughts or is not bad. Having a great meditation is not, doesn't mean you're a good person. It just is. Also, trying to push thoughts away or crush them is not helpful. It's also not helpful to try to edit the thoughts or to ignore them. These are all ways of engaging with them. And to any extent that you engage with the thought, that helps to solidify it, to strengthen it, give it more substance, keep you involved. It's just another thought. He says, you are just you, thinking and coming back to the breath. You are not trying to push thoughts away. You are not trying to cultivate them. You're just here. Now, labeling thoughts does not mean having a conversation about the thought. Look at that. I'm thinking. The thought arises, label it thinking, and return the attention to the breath. Any comment at that point is just entertainment and a new train of thought. He says in the reading, just come back. Abruptness is necessary. Remarks are a waste of time. Meditation is not really about working with our thoughts. It is learning to recognize them as thoughts and remaining here, present, awake, on the spot. It's the practice of waking up from our dreams. Also, at this point, we're practicing mindfulness, shamatha meditation, and in the context of the Hinayana, which is the narrow path. Keep it simple. Just do it. We all have aspirations of one sort or another, and that's fine. But it is a mistake to expect a certain experience or result from the practice. That will just create confusion. You may have dreams of becoming a perfect bodhisattva. Great. That's a good aspiration. And that may come with time. Who knows? But any expectation that you can have of a future experience cannot possibly be accurate. They're just thoughts. So practice, practice, practice. And also, it's not helpful to go about practice in some special way, trying to come up with your own cool personal twist. Keep it simple. I think in the reading it says something about that's shamatha, straight, no soda, which is another nice quote. So just do it. It works. I guess that's it.
Thank you, Barry. So I'm going to cover the next part of the reading, and then we'll have a discussion. I think the thing to draw from these readings is just the last thing that he said, and he was quoting Trungpa Rinpoche. Just do it. It works. It's so simple. And letting go of ambition and what is attendant to ambition is self-criticism. When you have an ambition that you want to be a great meditator or you don't want to be a bad meditator, then one is constantly judging oneself. And that is just another thought. And it's a pernicious thought. It makes us feel bad, could be discouraging. So the idea is you just see it and come back. When we are in dream and we're lost in thought, we've gone away. And what we're doing here, as he says again and again, is come back. We used to write things on our hands years ago, like come back. And I often thought, to get to write it on my knuckles, COMEBACK. The trouble is you stop seeing those kinds of things after a while. You just have to get into the habit. One does. We do. Of recognizing that we're lost in a dream somewhere and coming back. The next chapter is entitled Touch and Go. And the foundation of this chapter is that we are able to come back because fundamentally we know when we're here. This is called, in the tradition, it's called in Tibetan, they say rung rik. And what that means is that one has awareness of oneself, not in the sense of ego, but in the sense of being, one's being, that you can come back to the sense of being. We go off into a dream, we're lost, we're in Poughkeepsie, we're in, Miami, we're in Oshkosh, having a fight or making love or whatever we're doing. And then suddenly we realize we're dreaming and we're back. We're back here. And that ability to recognize our being is pure, it's simple, it's clear. It has no thought component. It's absolutely clear awareness of this this present moment. Isn't that amazing? It's magical. It's our basic being, the fundamental nature. And so what we do in meditation is we see that we're lost in a dream. We recognize that, and we come back to this fundamental awareness that is always here, this awareness of this present moment. Ran Rik. Rik means pure awareness without any thought. And Ran is self, itself, the awareness of itself. And this is what we touch. We go, but we are in dream, we come back and we touch this clear, effortless awareness. And we don't hold on to it. If we hold on to it, then it becomes a thing and we're back into thought. We touch it and we let go and just rest for however long. And the practice of meditation is to do this again and again and again. We might get discouraged. We might think, gee, I just can't stop thinking. That's another thought. Don't get caught up in these self-attacking, ambitious and self-attacking thoughts. Just they are more thought. You see them and you come back, and here we are. We're in the room. We're in front of the computer. You can hear. You can feel your legs. All of this. We come back to that, and then we'll go off into thought again, and we come back. This is the practice. We are shifting our allegiance. And it takes time. We're shifting our allegiance from the dreams of thought with all of their promise and fear and anxiety and hope to simple, clear awareness in the present moment. And we have to do it over and over again. And the thing is that you're being told that you have to do it over and over again. That's a good thing to hear. Because we might be very hard on ourselves when we say, Jesus, I'm a terrible meditator. I can continually go off and get lost in thought. Yes, we do, each one of us. That's fine. And then again, you come back again and again. He says in this reading, it's so helpful, I think, if you sit for an hour, you might come back 100 times. And you just do it. Drop the ambition, drop the self-recrimination, as much as possible. They're wastes of time. Worse, there's sadness, there's self-punishment, there's self-attack. And that is the ultimate evil from a Buddhist perspective. Self-attack, self-doubt. It is ego's tool. It is ego's method of seduction, of keeping itself alive. It is ego's raison d'etre. To self-attack. That's the way ego persists, because it keeps this myth of this self-attacker alive. And it's a waste of good time. It's a waste of our humanity. So the process is touch and go. You come back, you see it, this awareness, and you let go. You don't hold on to it. And you just do that as many times as you need to. He says the go part is that you don't hang on to that awareness. You do not sustain your sense of being, this awareness and being, but you let it go. See, awareness in the present moment and being, they're completely united. And we come back to this. It's our own being. It's our own awareness. It's right here. They're one. And then we don't hold on to it, because if you hold on to it, that's ego, again, trying to co-opt. He says you might be worried about egolessness and egohood. Let the guru and the sangha take care of that. Let go of worries about the future. Yeah. I'm reminded of this story. I told it before, I'll tell it again, of the fellow who's going to see the Buddha. And he's walking down the road. He's on his way to see the Buddha. And he passes a fellow who's singing and dancing under a tree. And the dancer singer says to the traveler, the walker, "Where are you going?" And the fellow says, "I'm going to see the Buddha." And he says, "Oh, while you're there, would you ask him how many more lives before I attain enlightenment?" And the traveler agrees to do that. He goes on a bit further and he comes to a sannyasi. This is a yogi practicing austerities, self-torture really. And this guy's buried up to his neck in the sand under the hot sun, and ants are everywhere. It's a form of austerity. And the yogi calls out to the traveler, "Where are you going?" And the traveler says, "I'm going to see the Buddha." And the yogi says, "Oh, while you're there, would you ask him how many more lives I have to endure of this terrible pain and suffering before I achieve enlightenment?" And the traveler agrees. So he goes to see the Buddha, and then he comes back. And on his way back, he comes to this yogi still buried up to his neck in sand in the hot sun. And the fellow says, "Did you ask him, how many more lives?" And the traveler says, "Yes." He says, "Only one more lifetime." And the guy says, "Oh, one more lifetime of this. How am I going to endure?" And then he goes further and he comes to the singer dancer under the tree, and the dancer calls out to him. He says, "Did you ask the Buddha how many more lives?" And the traveler says, "Yes." He said, the Buddha said, "As many lives as there are leaves on this tree." And the dancer says, "Oh, is that all?" And he instantly enlightened. That's our message. That's the way we meditate. Oh, is that all? Back to the breath, or back to awareness, resting in awareness. Over and over again, we can do it. We can identify the thinking and come back. He says, avoiding problems or trying to get rid of them is itself a problem. It's a kind of self-aggrandizement. Bottling up your problems, you keep them as a family heirloom. You need to look at them without expectation of release from them or anything else. You just see it. And when you have a thought and you realize that you're thinking, as Barry said, they say in the text, it self-liberates. That is, it goes poof, And then another thought will come sooner or later, and probably sooner. Who knows? And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And the more you do it without self-recrimination, without ambition, the more it becomes powerful and effective and good, and a form of a healthy form of working on yourself. So you're supposed to experience all your thoughts, including your aggressive, lustful, jealous, sad, proud, all those thoughts, and you look at them. And in looking at them, you become free of them. As soon as you become aware that you're having that kind of aggressive dream, well, then there's the option to let it go and just rest in awareness. Until or unless, if you don't see those thoughts, then we're doomed to live the dream, to act it out, just like a sleepwalker, just like a dreamer at night. We are caught in the dream, and we will act out those dreams of aggression and neuroticism. Finally, in the third chapter, he talks about common obstacles. One is lack of commitment. We really need to be committed to the practice because it works and it works best when it's regular. And I mean every day. It's better to do it for a short time, even 5-10 minutes in a day, than to do it for long periods of time, but infrequently. Once a week, 3 times a week, whatever. Short and frequent, short and regular is by far the best, because the hardest part of practice is just getting your bottom down on the seat, on the cushion, making the time to do it. And why is that the hardest part? It's because we wake up in the morning and our mind starts churning, and we start thinking, I got to check my email. I want to have a cup of coffee. Oh, I got to call so-and-so today. Oops, I've got this thing to worry about. And pretty soon we're engaged in what Trungpa Rinpoche used to call neurotic speed. It's like a forward lean. It's like you're on a treadmill with your feet going underneath you, and you feel like you can't stop because you'll fall over. The hardest part of meditation is to take a time out from that anxious forward speed and get your bottom down on the cushion, because meditation is saying no to that forward speed again and again and again, by coming back from thought to awareness. So anything you can do to make it regular, and in this regard, anything that you can do to routinize it, have it at the same time every day makes it easier. Having it in the same place in your home makes it easier. Anything that you can do, coming to morning meditation, a group practice with somebody, with us or with anybody else, that makes it easier, because the hardest part is to stop that forward speed. And it's also, not only is it the hardest part, it's the biggest benefit. You're beginning to change your allegiance from that anxious, constantly nervous, forward lean into just being. And when we're lost in that forward lean, it's not intelligent. We think it is. Literally, we think it is. We're convinced that those thoughts are really important, really powerful. But when we come back into space, then we actually have the opportunity to really be intelligent, to consider our lives, to see what needs to be done. So lack of commitment is a big problem. He's talking about common obstacles in this last chapter. You need to make a commitment to yourself. You see, when you're lost in thoughts and we're in that forward lean, we're committed not to ourselves, we're committed to some dream of the future or the past. We're escaping the past, pursuing the future. And when we come back, we're making a commitment to this, to me, to this real person. The ambition is to be here in your body, psychologically bound to solid ground, he says. And then there's this line, hopelessness plays a big part. What does that mean? Hopelessness, this is not despair. This is literally hopelessness, without hope. You see, hope is all about the future. Hope has this vision of what you might become. And we hope for this. Or we hope we're not going to be what we were in the past. Giving that up is coming back to the present. This is not despair. Despair is not hopelessness. Hopelessness literally means hopeless, without it. Years ago, before I moved to New York, and now I'm back in Boulder, I remember walking around down the street up on 4th Street and seeing a car with a bumper sticker, never seen it before or since. It said, "Now that I've given up hope, I feel so much better." It's perfect. That's Trungpa Rinpoche. There was a famous incident. There was a poetry reading at Mackey Auditorium with Allen Ginsberg, Gary Snyder, Robert Bly, and a Japanese utopian poet who didn't speak English. He was a friend of Gary Snyder's, named Nanao Sakaki. And at the end of it, after everybody had read, Trungpa Rinpoche took the microphone and outrageously, he said, "I apologize for these poets laying their heavy trips on you." There were 2,500 people there at Mackey Auditorium. It was standing room only. And they didn't know him. They'd come for Gary Snyder and Allen Ginsberg. And he said, "Give up your hopes. Go home to your depressions," he said. Over and over again, he said it. Hopelessness doesn't mean despair. It means literally giving up that wishful thinking. Second one is lack of synchronization. Synchronization of what? Of body and mind. Because when mind and body are not synchronized, we're lost in thought and we're not even aware of our bodies. But when they're synchronized, we're right here in the present. We're here in the body, present. And the body is not just this, it's the chair that you're sitting on, it's the floor, it's the walls, it's the whole physical world. And when your awareness is here, mind and body are one, synchronized. And it's tranquil. And then he says, talking about the body, physical body, with synchronization of body and mind, breath corrects posture. And your posture allows your breath to happen naturally and with awareness. They work together. Good posture and the breath, they go together. The third one is beckoning the sense perceptions. And what you do is, he said, when you get tired of sitting, you entertain yourself with visual and auditory sensations. There's a practice that we did before COVID in the Shambhala, and then before that in the Vajradhatu Buddhist communities, called Datun. Datun is group practice. And it's Datun literally means a month period. What happened was that Trungpa Rinpoche went to Tassajara, the beautiful, extraordinary Zen mountain retreat connected with Zen Center in San Francisco. And he saw Suzuki Roshi, whom he loved, leading Sesshin. Sesshin is a Soto Zen practice, a month of sitting in together. And Rinpoche loved this. They don't do this in the Tibetan tradition, this group practice, extended group practice. And he brought it back and he adapted it to Tibetan style, which is a bit different than the Japanese, but close. And we would sit, and we would sit for months at a time. And when you go to Datun, you have a meditation instructor. They usually assign one meditation instructor who's a more experienced meditator for every 10 students. And the meditation instructors are given instructions about how to relate with the students. And one of the things they're told is they're warned that about 10 days in, a lot of the students, a number of them, will complain about inability to sleep at night. That's just what he's talking about here. And the reason is that you become fascinated with visual and auditory and the sensual perceptions during the day while you're sitting, because they're a form of entertainment. And then when you go to sleep at night, they play back and keep you awake. And as a meditation instructor, you're told, tell them, to just keep practicing and it'll go away after a few days. And it does. And everybody starts getting their sleep again. So that's the third obstacle. Yeah, he says, with good posture, again, good posture is so important. Your visual field should be somewhat dissolved. With good posture, you're not fascinated by sense perceptions because you are self-contained. You're here in the body, erect, powerful, contained. Good head and shoulders, that's a big phrase. Your shoulders are back, your head's erect. And you have basic one-pointedness, which is similar to the Buddha. The word Buddha means awakened one. And the Buddha sat in this posture. You are learning how to trust in just being. This posture helps. You're just being and trusting in that. Isn't that amazing that we could trust in just being here, now, who we are? Don't have to go on some terrific self-improvement program. Meditation is about being exactly who we are in the moment. And if you turn that into a self-improvement program, there's a phrase in the teachings, those, the victors, the jinas, that means the Buddhas, have pronounced incurable. The fifth one is pain. That's an obstacle. And basically, and this is another thing that you work with, it, especially at Daton, where you're sitting for a month, maybe. You can go to Daton, by the way, for a week at a time. And these days, Datons are more rare. Usually they're week programs. But Daton's terrific if you can do one. We're not doing them under COVID, obviously. And the problem is that when you're sitting like that, and at Daton, you start sitting usually at 7 a.m. and you sit for an hour, and then there's a break for an hour for breakfast. And breakfast after the first week is served Oreoki style. Oreoki is this Japanese Zen style, and it's a very ritualized form of serving food and eating it, so that it becomes since it's so programmatic, it becomes another form of meditation. You're meditating on these ritual movements. So you're sitting a lot, and you get pain. And the trick is to distinguish between pain that's merely sort of psychological, as a sort of a way of trying to exit, and real pain, because you don't want to be a martyr. You don't want to be sort of a superhero enduring pain. If you have real pain, it's not psychosomatic, not psychological, move. You don't torture yourself. It's not profitable. It doesn't help. So that's the trick, is to become aware of when your pain is just sort of a psychological trick and when it's real. And when it's real, you absolutely alleviate it, whatever it takes. He says you don't go to extremes of heroism and sacrifice. Drowsiness. That's a good one. Everybody says, what do I do when I get sleepy? I remember my friend, I won't say his name. I've known this guy for 50 years. And we went to the first seminary up in Jackson Hole, and we were sitting for 10 days, sort of like a Daton, 10-day period. And I watched him sitting on his cushion and just completely fall over like that. He fell asleep. He just went, wham, fall over. Don't do that. Try not to do that. You can get seriously hurt. So a lot of it he gives a lot of different reasons. Looking for entertainment, holding back, sort of holding back, making things too methodical and regular. It can come from too much care that the meditation goes smoothly. It can come from regarding drowsiness as a problem, and that will create further drowsiness. There are all kinds of reasons. I've come to the point where if I can't kind of wake myself up from drowsiness, I take a nap on the cushion and don't fall over. You just have to deal with it. It comes and it goes. Tightness, being too formal and deliberate in your practice. It's a form of ambition. Makes you tight. Let go of it. This is just a very natural, relaxed return to this state that we all have of awareness. It's here. It's our nature. It's our birthright. It's built in. Confusion only covers it temporarily, momentarily. And when the confusion clears, when we come back, we're coming back to what we already were. They call it Buddha nature, the fundamental awakened mind that we all possess, that is our basic being. Eye strain. If you try not to blink or if you close your eyes. So in this practice, he says, you're almost visually careless. Your gaze, we're practicing Vipassana, awareness practice. So your gaze is relaxed. It's not swimmy. You're not going blurry, but you're not hyper-focused either. You're just very natural, relaxed. You can even let your eyes relax a little more than normal. That's a good thing to do. That'll help you not have eye strain. This is a funny one, trance. I doubt that many people here are going to experience trance. You see, we're practicing shamatha vipassana meditation. It's very hard to practice trance in that. When you practice pure shamatha, you have your eyes closed and you're focused on an object. Might be the breath, might be a mantra. And you're focusing one-pointedly with your eyes closed, and there's tremendous self-awareness inside because your eyes are closed, so you're aware of what's interior. As opposed to when your eyes are open, your awareness expands, relaxes, expands into the space. Trance is that you have your eyes closed and you focus one-pointedly on an object so completely that it becomes kind of a form of self-hypnosis. This is very hard to achieve. It takes tremendous effort. These are called these trance states, and there are 8 of them. They go more and more and more subtle, are achieved by yogis who go off on the wrong track. If they're a Buddhist, it's considered the wrong track. In Hinduism, it might be considered the right track. And you go off and you become sort of self-hypnotized by the object, which becomes subtler and subtler. So we don't practice these. We regard them as just another form of self-aggrandizement. We're trying to achieve some kind of bliss, some kind of pleasure. The trance states are very pleasurable, but they're dead ends. They're cul-de-sacs. Because they're created, they will dissolve. Just like when you go to the gym and you build up your muscles, and then you stop going to the gym and the muscles dissolve. Same thing with the trance states. They take tremendous effort. And there are lots of stories about great teachers going and discovering some yogi in a cave who has been lost in a trance state. And it's the teacher's job to wake that yogi up and tell him, you're stuck. You're in a dead end. Get out of it. Move on the path. They say that you can, if you're really in a trance state, when a really powerful one, it can last for years and your body can wither away because it's so purely mental. So this isn't something we're going to do. But you can know that if you do get caught in some kind of blissful state of concentration, come back to the technique. If you're working with the breath, you can come back to that. If you're resting in the space of awareness, you can come back to that. Ringing in the ears, you're trying too hard. So if you're encountering these obstacles, the instruction is take a fresh start. Take a mental break, as it were, could just be an instant, and start again. You can do this over and over again in your practice. There is nothing wrong with it. And if you think there's something wrong with it, like I'm failing, that I have to start again, that is the obstacle. Any form of self-attack, self-recrimination is a waste of your good time. It's another trick of ego. Ego comes up with these tricks to maintain itself. And what ego is this constant commentary. Now I'm doing it right, now I'm doing it wrong. Oh, you're never going to get anywhere with this. Ego, its ultimate form of manifestation is self-attack, self-criticism. So you could take a fresh start, he says, over and over, 100 times in an hour. Keep starting again and again. Whenever things get too tangled, just cut it right there. Give the whole thing up and start fresh. Starting fresh means coming back to your posture, to your awareness of your head and shoulders, and then going back to the breath, if you're working with the breath, or just to awareness, if you're resting in awareness. This is a good one. Practice is very simple as long as you keep your posture. The posture is a saving grace. It's like you can go off in thought, but then you'll come back to the posture. Here, erect, on the cushion. Cheerful. Cheerful is so difficult and so important to be cheerful. That's a practice in itself, and it's a really profound practice. We're so inured, so habituated to self-attack and depression. Cheering up is giving that up. Giving up that self-attack and depression. And it clings, doesn't it cling? It says, no, no, don't forget me. Don't give up trying to become better. Don't give up the self-criticism, it says. So a cheerful, erect posture. He says, the idea of awareness has to become almost dogmatic. In a 1 hour sitting, you have to pull yourself back at least 60 times. It's a habit that we're developing to come back, to come back, to come back from dreams. We're shifting our allegiance from the neuroticism, the anxiety of dreams, which are all about wishing things were otherwise, to coming back to resting in this present moment. And then he talks about how you're not sitting to accomplish something. When he says that, that means giving up ambition. You're not trying to accomplish something. You're sitting to understand something. Now, even that can be twisted, but it's much more in the present moment. Finally, exertion and humor. Exertion is important. We have to get ourselves to do this regularly, even if it's short. And then humor. It is crucial to have a sense of humor. I'm reminded of a famous story about a fellow in Tibet. He was called the Black Yogi because his countenance was so grim and dark and unhappy. And he lived in a cave all by himself and practiced. And he was really depressed and unhappy and dark. That's why he was called the Black Yogi, because he had this black face. And one day, he saw he had a piece of turquoise on his shrine as a form of offering to the Buddhas. And one day he saw a mouse on his shrine trying to drag the turquoise away. But the turquoise was too big and the mouse couldn't drag it. So the mouse went away and then it came back and it had some other mice with it. And they all started trying to drag this piece of turquoise. And eventually they did. They managed to drag it off the shrine. And the yogi watching this burst into laughter. And instantly he was enlightened. Famous parable, famous story. The first time I ever heard Trungpa Rinpoche speak was in 1970. Here, it was here. Now, I used to be in New York. It was in New York on the Lower East Side somewhere, Lower West Side actually, in a loft. And he came in and he gave a talk about sense of humor. Now, I was a really serious yogi, as it were, in those days. And I was sitting on the floor in full lotus, trying to impress the teacher. And he came in with his wife, Diana, who was about 16 at the time, wearing a mini skirt. And they sat on chairs and I was sitting on the floor and I was just trying not to look up her skirt at her underwear, which was clearly visible at the time. And he gave this talk about sense of humor and it just wasn't funny. There was no humor and it didn't make me laugh. So I left and I said, well, that's that for that guy. I wrote them off. But then circumstances threw us together again, and a powerful connection was made, and I became his student. But he always emphasized the importance of sense of humor. That we appreciate, among other things, the irony and the hilariousness, like that Black Yogi, of the hardness with which we treat ourselves. It's a waste of your good time. You just do the practice with compassion for yourself and for others, and clarity. And with a sense of humor, if possible. That's really great. So that's it. And if you have questions, Barry and I can talk and about this reading. And yes, Philip.
Sure, thanks. And thanks for all of your teaching. So I've always had a question about these two chapters back to back. The first one, labeling thoughts, seems to teach that anything that comes up, small thoughts, big thoughts, even emotions, call them all thoughts, label them thoughts and move on.
Label them thinking, right?
Thinking, yeah. And then after that, in the very next chapter where he's talking about touch and go, it seems like he's advising you don't do that. On the last page there, 214, he says in shamatha, you don't just sign off, you acknowledge what is happening and you look at it. The basic point of shamatha is not to give yourself an easy time. He says, when such thoughts arise, you could experience them, look at them, and then come back to your breath. This is extremely important. So I'm wondering, is that just a matter of degree, or is like between little thoughts and big thoughts, or between thoughts and emotions? Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's just that it doesn't take much to see and acknowledge the thought. You don't have to roll around with it. You don't have to get into it. You don't have to think about it, especially that. It's just like an instant recognition. And it can be a terrible thought. You could be thinking about murdering somebody, or whatever it might be. And you just see it and you acknowledge it. And you don't judge it. And it will self-liberate. You don't have to get rid of it. That's what thoughts do. They evaporate by themselves unless you go back into it and follow it and say, well, if that, then this. And then you get involved in a whole story. So you just see it. When you say thinking, you're acknowledging it. You're not trying to get rid of it. You're acknowledging it and letting go. It will go by itself. In fact, it's almost disappointing how fast they disappear and then come back. And you do it again. Don't you find, those of you who are doing this, that it's slightly disappointing when you recognize that you've been thinking and you see it and then it goes? You sort of want to get a better look at it, but it doesn't hang around. It just evaporates. It's like, it's just like on a Mac computer. I always say this, I think this is an analogy for it. If you want to get rid of an icon in your dock, like an icon for some program, you grab it with your mouse and you drag it out into the middle of the desktop and you let go of it and it goes poof, it turns into a cloud and is gone. It's no longer in your dock. Same thing with thoughts. You drag them into the desktop of awareness and they just go poof.
But here and there, you get the notion from Trungpa Rinpoche that with thoughts, particularly as they're emotions, you want to pause for a moment and appreciate the texture.
When they're emotions are just big thoughts.
Right.
It's just a matter of degree, really. But emotions are, as Barry was said, they're combinations of energy, the push-pull of ego, like want to get rid of that, want to draw it to me, whatever it might be, indifference, might be the energy of passion, it might be the energy of jealousy, all kinds of things, and a storyline. The storyline says, that person was mean to me, I'm going to get even, and there's this storyline of revenge and a feeling of hatred and pain. When you cut the storyline, when you see, bring it to awareness, you just bring it to awareness, and it goes poof, it evaporates. So does the energy as well. But actually, you get a glimpse of that energy much more clearly. And that's important. That's really important. That's a beginning of a sort of another stage in meditation, to see those energies clearly, the energy of the emotions. And the only way that begins to happen is when you become aware of the storyline, bring it to awareness, and it dissolves. And then the energy of the emotion is still there for some period of time, pretty brief. That's the technique for working with emotions. Cut the storyline and experience what's left. Definitely.
Okay.
This is getting somewhat advanced, moving into the Mahayana stage of meditation. Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, I had some confusion about the difference between awareness and thought, in the sense that at one point, I think in the first chapter tonight, he talked about hearing as being a thought. There was no way you could hear without it being thought. And then you were talking about the sense perceptions as being thought. And I'm confused how that is different from being aware of sitting and being aware of your breath. It seems to me there's maybe a subtle distinction between the two.
Yeah, it gets very subtle. I mean, when we begin to concretize our sense perceptions, like you hear a sound and you do something with that, you don't like it or you do like it or whatever, you've turned it into a thought. But if you just purely are hearing without any kind of reactivity, then it's not. It's just pure awareness. It does get subtle.
Yeah, so in a sense, if you're labeling that sound or that sight, then it becomes thought. But if you're just acknowledging its presence, it's awareness.
If you can even label it, and then it self-liberates. It disappears. Labeling it helps you come back from the dream. That's all labeling is for. You label it thinking. And it's just so that you become aware, you come back to awareness. And you can see the space and you can see the thought, and it's labeled thinking, and then that's it.
Can I offer something here?
Please, Barry.
There's a thing that happens when you see something or hear something. In the instant that arises in your awareness, you know what it is. You don't have to think about it. It announces itself. And then you let it go. That's all that's necessary. You just see it, and in that instant, you know what it is. And then you return to the breath.
But
Thank you.
on that question, the gong rings. You know it's the gong. You hear the sound. But the minute you label it, oh, it's the gong, that's a thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is
Because-
the problem I have too. Because the moment I say thinking, it's a thought. And so I say thinking again. But it sort of goes on endlessly. Because after the thinking, there's a thought, oh, that was thinking. Oh, I labeled that. And then as soon as I do that, there's another thought arising that, oh, yes, I've done it again. There's never seems to be a moment where there isn't a thought. Even if it's a thought about a thought, it's a thought. So that's why sometimes I count my breath, because if I'm counting a breath, that's what I'm doing. More often, I'm counting the breath. That's the thought I'm having. I'm counting the breath. So I sort of go back and forth. But if I'm not counting our breath, it's really hard for me to experience even even the smallest amount of time where I'm not thinking because I'm labeling. I understand the idea, I think, and I try and follow it, and I try and be really gentle with myself about it. But it's rarely a moment if I'm not counting my breath that I'm not thinking. I mean, even a tiny moment.
Mika, can you turn on your picture? I'd like to see your face.
Oh, gee, I didn't realize it was off. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It was John.
There are the 3 buttons up in the upper right corner.
Right.
And here, I'm going to ask you to start your video.
There we go.
There you go.
Sorry.
That's okay. So you're looking at your screen, right? At me?
Yeah.
Okay. And right now, you're aware of the image on your screen without any effort. The effort and the self-consciousness can come in as an afterthought, but here it is. You're doing it. That kind of effortless awareness is there all the time. And then it's punctuated by the feeling of self-consciousness in one form or another. But right now, you're just here. You're hearing my voice, seeing my image. This is true for all of us. It's unstoppable. That is the fundamental awareness that we come back to. And when you say thinking, it's just a release from the dream to come back to this, if only for an instant before the next thought arises. It might last a while. It might not. You can't control that. You see, it's here all the time, this effortless awareness. All the time. That's why we talk about coming back. You're not creating something, you're coming back to it. And you do that over and over and over because we become so habituated to the thought. The thought is like a figure, and this is the ground. This unstoppable awareness is the ground. And the figure, the thought, arises on the ground. And we become so habituated to focusing on the figure that we don't notice the ground, this background awareness that's always here. Just like those figure ground games that you've seen, where people show you a picture and they say, what's this a picture of? And all you can see is the figure, the drawing. Does that help?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, because as you're talking, I'm aware.
Yes.
I'm seeing you, and there isn't necessarily a thought about that.
No. The thought can come and go,
Yeah.
But the awareness of this image, the sounds, is there. It's unstoppable. That's the beauty of this. This is what they mean when they talk about Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha, that we're all fundamentally enlightened. We've just gotten lost in the thoughts, which are figures against the ground. And those figures come and go.
So, John, if I'm seeing your face, when I then go to, oh, there's John, that's the thought.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, so it depends on you. Yeah, it's probably the thought. You're concretizing it. You're saying, oh, there's John. But I mean, it doesn't have to be. I can see you and recognize Judy without having to label it.
Right. But when you start to label it, that's when it would be a thought.
Yeah, when you get into a whole Megillah, to use a Sanskrit word,
Right.
About, is this person my friend? Are they not my friend? What do I think about her? Do I, and then you're lost in thoughts about. But meanwhile, the image stays there, doing whatever it's going to do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this is what we come back to. This is awakened mind. And this is where true intelligence lies. That's the amazing thing. We think intelligence lies in thought. The real intelligence lies in this open, clear, unstoppable awareness. Thought obscures it. I remember Trungpa Rinpoche once gave a talk at the University of Colorado. He was invited by the then head of the Religious Studies Department, 1971, to give a course. And he came in, I've actually written this up, this lecture, The Three Bodies of the Buddha. You can find it online. It was published a couple of places. And he goes up to the blackboard. And he picks up a piece of chalk, and there are a bunch of sleepy undergrads sitting there. And he draws a picture, stick drawing of a bird on the blackboard. And he says, turns to the students, he says, "What's this a picture of?" Bird's got its wings out, beak, pointed beak, little feet. He says, "What's this a picture of?" And of course, nobody wants to answer because it's so obvious. Finally, some kid raises his hand. He said, "It's a picture of a bird." Rinpoche said, "It's a picture of the sky." From that, he went into one of the most profound teachings in all of Buddhism, the three bodies of the Buddha, they're called. It's a multi-level description of reality as it arises only in the present moment. And we get lost again and again in the figure, which is our thoughts, which are arising and passing away against the ground of our being. This unstoppable spatial awareness. Space is a huge term. I use it all the time in meditation instruction. It's one of the key terms in the most advanced levels of the teachings. Space. In Tibetan, it's Nying, and in Sanskrit it's Dhatu. And they talk about the space of phenomena. That's what we're in the middle of. This huge space in which phenomena, the six kinds, are arising and passing away in the moment. You turn your head, the visual objects all change, the sounds are continually changing. Now you're aware of your bottom on the cushion that I mentioned it. That's arisen. It's all arising in space and passing away in the instant. But we are looking for permanence, and then we try to find that in thought. Because thought's all about things existing over time. It's an imaginary thing. We don't experience that in our lives. We only think about it. It's a story.
I have a question. You say there's like 8 levels of trance, which is an obstacle right now?
Yeah.
8 levels?
There are traditionally, there are 8 levels.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you what the first 4 are. I've forgotten. The last 4 are things like this. It's concentration. The first one is concentration on space. The second one, this is at the most advanced level of trance state. The second one is concentration on pure consciousness. You take it as an object. This is really subtle stuff. The third one is concentration on not this and not that. And the fourth level of trance is concentration on not this and not that. So if you ever get there, let me know.
Oh, no.
Don't do it.
So it's all like levels of what we get lost in. Right?
Yes.
There's barriers, not non-ending, because it does end, but I mean these layer after layer of levels that we lose ourselves in while we are, as we get away from the ground.
Yes.
As our thoughts and our realizations and our stories take us farther and farther away from the ground in all these levels.
Well said. But we're not practicing trance states here. These are called the dhyanas. In the Southern Buddhist tradition, they're called jhanas. It's just the Pali for Sanskrit is dhyana. And I asked Trungpa Rinpoche once, would it ever be useful to practice the dhyanas? And he said, yes, but only after you've developed a terrific understanding of shunyata, meaning of reality. And then I asked him, why? Why would you do it then? And he said, to develop flexibility of mind. And I know that what he meant by that is so that you can understand all the different experiences that confused human beings can have so that you can help them. But it's really an advanced practice to do it that way. Most people, when they do these concentration states, and I'm only going into this because if you've practiced in a Hindu tradition, this is actually regarded as a good thing. Buddhists regard it as a cul-de-sac, a dead end, and dangerous.
I'm sorry, I lost. What's the cul-de-sac?
These dhyanas, these trance states, these
I
states
got
of
it.
concentration, they take a tremendous amount of work and time, and they're dead ends.
Because
John?
I think I'm a means to in among themselves.
Yeah.
Sorry, Barry.
Is that kind of like what Ram Dass? I don't know a lot about him, but it seems like they were looking to get into a pleasurable state. Is that correct?
I can't comment on Ram Dass. I really don't. I knew him years and years and years ago, and I haven't had much to do with him since. And I loved him. He was a wonderful guy. He's full of humor and intelligence, and he told great jokes. Yeah.
Before I started this, I thought the point, I'm sorry, I thought the point, some people were just seeking to do that. And now I see it's different now. So I was just commenting on that because I don't have a lot of understanding. So
I'll tell you, let's close. And I'm going to close with a Ram Dass joke. Okay.
Good.
It's 7 o'clock. I think we should end. Here's a Ram Dass joke from years ago. God, this must be more than 50 years ago that I heard him tell this joke. And you remember Ram Dass was Jewish. So the joke goes like this: Moshe and David, they're getting old, on in years. So they make a pact. Whoever dies first will get a message back from the other side to the survivor, telling him what it's like. Well, it happens. Moshe dies first. David is grief-stricken. He goes to the funeral. But as soon as the funeral's over, he makes an appointment with a local medium. The day comes, he goes to the local medium's home, knocks on the door. No sooner does he knock, the door swings open. And he hears this voice. David, David, the voice says. This is Ram Dass telling this joke. Sweat breaks out on David's brow. He turns pale. He says, Moshe, Moshe, is that you? The voice says, David, it's me. David says, Moshe, what's it like? The voice says, David, every day I get up, I eat, I make love, I go to sleep. I get up, I eat, I make love, I go to sleep. David says, Moshe, Moshe, you must be in heaven. The voice says, heaven? I'm a moose in Idaho. So I hope it isn't a terrible note to end this class on. That was Ram Dass. He was wonderful. So friends, we can end with the dedication of, I'm going to put 2 dedications up, and I hope, if you wish, you can join. If not, you don't have to. The first one is dedicating the offering that's on the shrine to all sentient beings. And the second one will be dedicating the merit that we've accumulated during this evening to the benefit of all sentient beings. This is a very Mahayana thing, and it's something that goes all the way through the path. So I'm going to mute all just because we get a cacophony if we don't. And afterwards, you can unmute yourselves and we can have a discussion if you like, just conversation. Assemblies of oceans of Samaya bound, accept this offering gift of Torma. May we yogins with our disciples obtain lordship, freedom from disease, long life, glory, fame, good fortune, and all great and vast enjoyments. Grant us the siddhis of the pacifying and enriching actions and so on. Samaya holders, guard us, support us with all the siddhis. May there be no untimely death, illness, duns or obstructing spirits for us. May we have no nightmares, ill omens, or bad dealings. May the world enjoy peace, have good harvests, abundant grain, expansion of Dharma, and glorious auspiciousness. Accomplish whatever mind desires. And now the dedication of merit to the benefit of all sentient beings. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Well,
Thanks
you.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
John and Barry.
John.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Barry.
Night.
Thanks, John.
Yay.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Don't be a moose in Idaho.
That's
Hey,
a good one.
John and Larry,
Huh?
can I ask you a question real quickly about Tonglen? What would be the best way for me to get some instruction on that?
Oh, just come to morning meditation and
Okay.
I will probably take you into a breakout room and give you Tonglen instruction.
Okay, fantastic. I've been doing it a while, and I just have some questions about it too. So that would be great. It's hard for me Monday through Friday to make meditation just because I have to be at school by like 7:30. So
Hey.
I might maybe I don't know, Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, Saturday or Sunday, that'd be fine. And I'll send you a document too.
Oh, great. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, so the 5 steps.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah, I don't know about those. That would be wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks,
Cool.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So long, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
the
Barry.
everything, Larry. Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
Thank you, Barry.
Bye.
Just want to say quickly, John.